Right now, then, we've got yet another thrilling section for you, because we're going to talk now to Nick Freeman, criminal defence lawyer, friend of the show, Mr. Loophole, as he is sometimes known. He's got some New Year driving resolutions, and I have to say, having driven around so far this year, it doesn't seem to be any better than it was last year. The only thing that's different this week is that it's a little bit quieter on the roads, just because so few people have decided to travel because of the rail strikes. Nick, a very good morning to you. Well, Happy New Year.
Good morning, Mike. Happy New Year to you too.
Nice to see you. I mean, all the problems that we spoke about, I suppose, last year, from cyclists to electric scooters to electric bikes to kind of all sorts of strange and wonderful contraptions that people are travelling around the cities of our country in. You've got a plan for a sort of a new year and maybe a new beginning for all of us. Are you going to hope that we all get along a lot better or something?
Well, look, it's a new start. All those problems, of course, remain.
Yes.
But sometimes with a new year, new mindset, a positive mindset, maybe a little bit more patience, having had a well-earned rest for many people. Many people had 10 days off. So I've come up with some ideas, and they might just help people. It's not startling new stuff, but it helps people, I think, focus on what they should do when they're on the roads. At the moment, you're right, the roads are quiet. We have a big space problem, don't we? And one of my real bugbears is people who just don't know what it means to overtake and then move over. Particularly on the motorway, it's astonishing. They think, well, I'm going to overtake. There's nothing on the near side lane. So my simple message is, number one, don't lane hog. When you've overtaken, get back over, because it infuriates motorists. And it uses up all the valuable space that we have, the limited space, and delays journeys and causes massive frustration. So that's one thing, of course, and it's against the highway code. And people who sit in the middle and outside lane when there's nothing on near side lane, they are actually committing a criminal offence. And if we did have police on our roads, or had technology that was able to deal with it, they get at least 3 points on their licence, because they're driving without reasonable consideration for other road users. So that is something that I think people should be aware of, and maybe they can refocus and say, right, I'm going to make a concentrated effort. When I overtake, I'm going to move back over, number one.
You might be able to answer a question, actually, that I haven't been able to get an answer from anybody else. The Highways Agency, which has now been renamed something else, but it's sort of been...
National Highways.
Yeah, National Highways. They were going to go on strike, and we were told just before Christmas that might cause problems on the road, but I couldn't find anyone to explain to me what it was that they actually did. And are they the people responsible for those kind of Battenberg-style cars that you see driving around on motorways that have got Highways patrol on them?
Yeah, patrol officers.
Yeah.
No, National Highways, when they're talking about going on strike, these are the people who monitor the cameras. That's the area of concern. So if they're on strike, boy, do we have a problem, because we have no one. So if you're then in a situation where you break down, you've got no one to respond to the technology and close that lane.
Right.
So that will be. I think they were planning on going on strike. I'm not sure what their plans are now, and they were going to reduce the speed limit to 60 miles an hour.
Yeah.
On the belief that, well, it will make the road slightly safer. In my experience, most smart motorways are 60 miles an hour in any event.
Right. I've also seen quite a few people sending me tweets over the course of Christmas period with speed limits restrictions saying, for clean air, please don't drive over 60 miles an hour. And that's a new thing, isn't it?
Well, it's popular in Europe. It's relatively new here. They are, of course, guidelines. It's not mandatory.
Right.
If they're saying please drive at this speed, it depends on how it's phrased. But by and large, it's a guideline to try and reduce, obviously, carbon emissions in the air.
Right.
So if they circle it in a way that makes it mandatory, then of course you have to comply with it, and often they do.
Okay. What else have you got for us by way of a sort of resolution?
Obviously, this is a time where people have consumed quite a lot of alcohol, and I think just generally people they forget they've had a heavy day, heavy night. They wake up the next morning and they feel fine. They've had some water and they feel fine. The reality is that you will be over the limit for most of the next day, and the number of clients that we unfortunately get coming through the door, and they're pulled over for a minor offence. They're not in any way drunk. They don't feel drunk. They're asked to blow into the machine. And, of course, they're over the limit. And if they are convicted, there are horrendous consequences. So people, they need to be aware. If you've been consuming alcohol, leave it 24 hours before you get it. car. It's nothing to do with how you feel. It's to do with how you actually are.
Yes.
And people make that mistake and do not understand. I felt absolutely fine. I don't understand it. How can I be over the limit? It's just the way alcohol dissipates in your body. And people are ignorant of it. There's no sort of education about it. Alcohol stays in the system for a long time. If you've had a bender, do not drive the next day. That's it. Simple as that.
I think that's probably the best way forward. And as far as the sort of the ever-present march of the non-motorised vehicle, I suppose you might say, the electric vehicle, the electric bike, the electric motorbike, all that kind of thing. I mean, there's a sense, is there not, that that's kind of on the wane because of the fact that, one, electricity is costing an awful lot of money, and also people are starting to work out that they're not perhaps as reliable, some of these machines, as they were sold.
Well, certainly with electric cars, the government is still full steam ahead, but people are going to realise very quickly that actually it's not a cheap alternative. They're being seduced by the fact that electricity, was cheaper. It still is cheaper, but actually that's going to change very soon because the government's going to have a massive tax hole, and it's going to need to fill that, and there's going to be huge tax consequences from using an electric car that do not exist at the moment. In terms of electric scooters and electric bikes, in my mind, they're here to stay, and they're going to grow exponentially, and we need legislation in place, which is sadly lacking at the moment, to deal with that.
I find fewer of the electric scooters around at the moment, I assume because it's a bit damp and it's a bit cold and it's not really the summer, but it's kind of lulled me into a false sense of security, perhaps, where I think maybe people aren't just riding around on them as much.
I think possibly because people aren't at work at the moment, they're just going back. I think within the next 2 or 3 weeks, you'll see exactly the same on the roads. There'll be a massive increase. I think we just at the moment assume because the roads are quiet. There's still many people on holiday this week. I think it's important to bear that in mind.
Yeah, because a lot of the schools are still not back.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Nick, good to see you. I'm sure we'll be talking throughout the course of the year. There'll be plenty of issues coming up. Nick's a criminal defence lawyer, specifically regarding an awful lot of traffic offence type stuff. And if you have been involved in anything like that, obviously, you have to be very careful out there. As he says, if you've been drinking the night before, you just don't get in a car. Don't forget, as well, if you're listening to Talk Radio, you can watch this programme on